Jack E. Kovalik was born on July 18, 1922 in Springfield, Illinois. When Jack was 20, he was first drafted into the Army in December of 1942, but he was able to get a deferment so he could provide for his family. In March of 1943, he got his second notice.
I knew I was going to be drafted at some time because I was right at the right age, but in 41 and 42, I was drafted. I got my first notice in December of 1942. So then in March of 1943, I got another notice to report for duty. It's a mixture of feelings because, you know, the United States was in a war, and I was at the right age then. I was in 42, in July I was 20, so I was at the good age for a soldier. And I knew I was going to have to go, and you just have to make up your mind to make the best of it. I didn't like being in the infantry, but I had no choice there either.
Jack was inducted to the Army in Peoria, Illinois, and went to Belleville, Illinois to get his uniform. He then took a train to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for training.
Well, being in the infantry, one of the first things they try to do is to build up the body. You know, we did a lot of exercise, calisthenics, what they called it, a lot of running, a lot of walking, and then you're living in a barracks with 20, 30 men in the barracks at the time. Get to know different people, and it was a hard training. We had to train hard because it's just to build up your body, basically, and then to know the regulations and what to do and how to do it, how to protect yourself, how to fire weapons, and all those things. The biggest thing is that you learn to take orders or give orders, whatever. As I advanced in rank, I began giving orders myself then. But you gotta learn what they want you to do, and when they say do it, you have to do it.
He trained at Fort Jackson for 10 months and went through Tennessee practicing warlike situations on his way to Camp Atterbury in Indiana. Jack became a part of the 106th Infantry Division and was put on the front lines at the border of Germany and France.
I didn't see too much because they put us on the front lines. By that time, Germany had been pushed back all the way from Africa, up Italy, across France, and back into Germany again, where we are on the German and French border. It used to be called the Siegfried Line. And we were just waiting. Eisenhower knew that they were going to make another extra push. It was our last push because they didn't have much equipment left or anything. They had no much ammunition or anything. But we were scattered over a period about, I forget how far it was. So a not great number of miles. We were spread out quite a ways between Germany and France, the border. So a lot of our men were killed, and a lot of us were captured right early in the battles because we didn't have enough help there. But that's where the Battle of the Bulge comes in, where they pushed us back. The Americans retreated, not retreated, but they moved back, and then Eisenhower with the new bunch was already ready to attack, and so then they pushed them all back. But in the meantime, a lot of us were captured, a lot of them were killed. And
Jack was involved in the Battle of the Bulge, which was a major battle for the Allies because the Germans were becoming desperate and needed a last offensive. The Germans attacked Allied forces and took hundreds of prisoners of war, and Jack was one of them.
Well, we were separated from our regular outfit because we were spread out so far. There was about 100 in the group that I was in. And we thought we were getting to the American lines, there's confusion and everything. Didn't know where we were going at the time. About 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we thought we were close to the American lines, and all of us, once we heard surrender, we got you surrounded. And we knew that there were Germans all around us then, because the voice came from all over. And so the highest ranking officer that was in that group told us that we may as well not do anything, because we didn't have enough people. We had no ammunition. We had nothing else. We did have our weapons yet, but we said to throw them down. So that's what we did. And then Germans came from all over that time. Then they were back in hiding. They were well dug in. They knew what they were doing then. And so that's where we started.
The treatment was not horrible. There was just a lack of food and resources.
We didn't have any control over ourselves then. The Germans were in control now. We were prisoners. It's just like American had taken a lot of our prisoners and brought them to the United States at that time too. Fortunately, I wasn't mistreated. The outfit we were in, we were never mistreated, except we didn't have enough to eat. They'd give us a loaf of bread, like a regular loaf, only it was dark bread filled up with whatever they had to make it up. It was a heavy sort of a bread. We'd get a loaf of bread like that, and then they'd line us up in fours, and 4 of us would get together and divide it. Well, before that was the 4 of us. Every 4 had it, and it was divided equally, very equally. We all watched it, And then you'd get a piece about like that big, and that maybe lasts 2 or 3 days, 4 days, whenever they had some bread again or a little bit of soup, and that's about it. That's all we could eat, all we had. I was talking to a guard one time, and he was walking right next to me. He was an elderly fellow. He was older than I was. The younger guys were on the front lines, and they recruited them, and he told me that they were going to stop in a little village where for a couple days. He didn't know how long it was going to be there. So I just asked him, I says, well, if you go in there and there's anybody would like to have some wood cut or something that I can do for something to eat, because it's when we were really hungry. And so the next day after we slept he knew where I was sleeping in a barn there, and he came to me and he says, there's a family downtown in this little village, just a little country village, that would need some work done. So I went over there. I couldn't do much, but I brought in some wood for them, and they fed me at the table, and they had some kind of a soup and stuff, but that was a little different too,
When he was a prisoner of war, everything except a New Testament and notebook was taken from him. But in that notebook, he recorded every city they went through as prisoners, starting in Gorlitz and going through 32 different cities in a span of approximately 2 months to reach Brunswick when Americans came and the 106th Division was liberated on April 13th, 1945.
Very thankful. Now I'm going to go home. Because I knew they told us the day ahead of time, the Germans did, that the Americans are here. They were just outside of where we were. And they were going to be there tomorrow, they said. So that night, the Germans all left, and the next day the Americans came in with the trucks and took us back. But we had walked already from the eastern part of Germany, right on the eastern border. We had been moved us back there when we were first captured to a little town in Gerlitz, it was called. And then we walked for 2 months coming toward the west so we could be closer to the Americans. And that's when the Americans came and liberated us.
After they were liberated, he had to regenerate his body before he was able to be shipped back to the United States.
Yeah, well, they took us by a truck to a camp in France, close to the seashore, and we were there for a couple of weeks getting fed, because we hadn't been eating or anything, just the bread and a little bit of soup. Every once in a while you'd get that. That's about it. And we got clean clothes right away. They took the clothes off we had and burned them because they were full of lice and everything else, being and sleeping in barns and, no place to take a shower or anything like that. Just every one of us were in the same shape. But as soon as that's the first thing we did was they gave us, was able to get a shower and some clean, good clothes again. The Army clothes. And that felt good.
He arrived in New York City on May 15, 1945. He was able to take a train to Chicago, Illinois, and another to Springfield. Jack was able to go home on a 6-day furlough, and during his furlough, he married one of his longtime friends, Hilda. Jack and Hilda got married on July 8, 1945, but on July 18th, he had to go back to service in military police at Fort Sheridan in Chicago, Illinois. The war eventually ended on August 12, 1945, and on November 17th, he was discharged.
Day of jubilation. We just glad to get back home and stay home, Like I said, I had already gotten married and my wife was at home. She's in Springfield. So I was glad to be there.
Once he was discharged, he was able to go home and return to civilian life.
My fingers are always cold. They were frostbite while I was a prisoner of war. And then my stomach was a little upset. I still have to be careful on what I eat. I can eat pretty good, but there's some spicy foods and stuff that I don't care for.
Jack did not like the war, but he did what he had to do for our country.
Well, like I say, it's one of those things that at that time we'd never have any war on United States soil other than the Civil War. But after the war, all the wars have been fought in the Middle East or in Russia and Europe all over, and so it's just a feeling that you have. You had to go. Nobody likes war. Nobody wants a war, but when you're called up to duty, you do the best you can. I was a little disappointed when I first went in that I was in the infantry. I didn't want to be in the infantry, but I couldn't get out of it, so I just made up my mind and may as well make the best of it.
Mr. Jack Kovalik performed a great service to his country during World War II. After being drafted, he sacrificed his job and left his family to protect the great country we know today. Even though he needed to support his family, Mr. Kovalik felt he also had a duty to defend not only his own family, but all other American families. With that in mind, he followed in his brother's footsteps and reported for duty. While fighting overseas, he was quickly exposed to the horrors of war when his company was captured. He remained a prisoner of war for several months. While a prisoner, he trusted in God to provide and never lost faith that they would be liberated. Mr. Kovalik is a man of tremendous character, and it has been our pleasure learning about his story. We want to personally thank Mr. Kovalik for his service to our country and also for taking the time to share his experiences with us. We would also like to thank all veterans, past and present, for fighting to preserve our nation. We owe a great debt to them that can never be repaid.